If you're a local specialized business, does it pay to get on podcast shows? Is it worth the effort? Is it worth the time? Hi, this is Kathleen Gage with Podcast Rockstar Club, and today we're featuring Natasha Tatton, who is the co-owner of Eds Bred in Whistler, British Columbia. It's a vegan bakery, and she says podcast shows are the way to go, so stick around. And Natasha, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let the Podcast Rockstar Club people know what you do, and then let's talk about podcast interviews.
Hi, Podcast Rockstars. I am, as Kathleen said, Natasha. I co-founded a bakery with my husband at the base of Whistler Mountain in BC, British Columbia. For people that don't know, it's in Canada. And we have a unique concept because we have an organic sourdough bakery that is 100% plant-based. So it's quite unique that it's the only bakery in the town that you can ski to, and everything we make is with plants.
And where did you come up with the concept for your business?
Well, my husband and I had been vegan for a number of years, and he was working as a chef in a fine dining restaurant and has been doing that for 20 years. And he was making bread for the restaurant. He brought that to the restaurant. They didn't do that before he worked there. He loved making bread. And then he would make bread for some of our friends. He would make bread for our yoga teacher. And all the yogis in the studio would say, "That smells pretty good. When can we get some of this bread?" And then before long, they started asking him, like, "We want to buy this bread." So he rented the kitchen once a week from the restaurant he was working at, started making bread for the community, and it grew and grew and grew to the point where he couldn't make enough. So the restaurant kind of wanted to take over the project and put an ultimatum on the table, like either this becomes absorbed by the restaurant, it's no longer your side hustle, or you stop doing it. So we decided that we were going to actually team up together. I'd been working in the environmental space as a volunteer and just felt like I could have a lot more impact. I had a lot of energy to invest in the environment and animals and so on. And I felt like this would be a really cool project for my husband and I to work together on. And so I said, let's open a plant-based bakery. And you know, the main thing will be bread. We will always be a bread shop, but we do a lot of other stuff as well. And that's kind of how it happened. It was the community saying to us, "We want you to open a bread shop." And then so we teamed up.
All right. Well, and I want to remind people that this is Kathleen Gage with the Podcast Rockstar Club, and I am talking with Natasha, who also goes by Tosh, Tatton, and she is one of the co-founders of Eds Bred in Whistler, British Columbia. Beautiful resort area. I saw that picture that you posted, and it's like, okay, we're coming up and we're visiting for sure. And I want to try out the sourdough bread. But what I find interesting, the two of us, we met on a women's vegan networking, international networking platform. And Katrina Fox is the one who founded that. Brilliant idea. She's a brilliant woman. And I had put it out to the group because I was doing a presentation on how to get on podcast shows. Yeah. And I put it out to the group. I'm looking for people who are plant-based, 100% plant-based to be on my podcast show. You jumped on the opportunity. And you also joined the Podcast Rockstar Club. You said, you know, we need more ways to market our business, and this makes sense. Now, what I really want to acknowledge is that you didn't just sit around and hope that the information would work. You dug in, you rolled up your sleeves. I can go into the back area and see who's gone through the program, and I know that you have gone through a great deal. You're almost completely through it. You probably got to a point like, okay, this thing is, I'm so busy now with podcast interviews, I've got to just focus on that.
I thought I had completed it.
You know, you may have. I guess,
okay.
You know, it's okay. My bad.
Is there more to do?
Yeah, but let's talk about why you decided that podcast interviews would maybe be a good idea, why you invested in the Podcast Rockstar Club, and what you've been doing and what your results have been. So let's talk about that.
Okay, so initially I hadn't met you, and I was already on a few podcasts because there were some vegans in Vancouver, which is 2 hours drive from Whistler. It's kind of the closest city. And these people have a podcast down there where they interviewed all the vegan business owners in Vancouver, and they had found us, and they actually approached us and said, we have a podcast, do you want to be on it? And to be honest, we were kind of like, what is this? What is this about? We just kind of left it there for a few months. And then I think I heard something about, podcasts was a good way to sort of get your word out there. So I went back to them, and actually, I think it was Katrina Fox's course said about speaking opportunities, and that you shouldn't, when you're new to them and you're kind of nervous about speaking to large audiences, you shouldn't dismiss small opportunities, because they're really good opportunities to practice. So I went back to them and I said, hey, like, you got in touch with us a while ago. Sorry, we've kind of not been in touch, but would you still want us on your podcast? And they did. And I remember going on that podcast, the first one I ever did, and I was incredibly nervous, and I didn't really know much about how it was going to go. They didn't give us any scripted questions. It was a very organic conversation, but it went really well. We got on really well with the couple. It's a couple that do it together. And then a few months after that, a local vegan food blogger here in Whistler, she's an Olympian actually, Julia Murray, she started the Whistler Vegan Festival, which got cancelled because of COVID.
Right.
But she did start a podcast associated with the festival, and she reached out to us as one of the first people to be on it as a local Whistler vegan business. So I'd done a couple, and then I met you, and you said, come on my show. And I thought, yeah, well, I've been on a couple, so yeah, I can do this. And then I just dug a bit deeper. You had that amazing course, really good value for money. And I thought, I can afford that. It was, I don't know, a couple $100 or something. And so I thought, I need to learn more about this, because I've done a couple, but there's obviously a lot more to it. So I started doing the course, and then I learned very quickly that if you really want high visibility, you need to be doing like one podcast a week kind of thing. So
right.
I've had that mindset, and I've been doing a lot of research and outreach, and I find that you have to work it into your routine. So I'll often listen to podcasts in the morning when I'm getting ready to go to work. Sometimes I'll be able to get 2 in because they're only half an hour long or something. And then when I come home at the end of work, that's when I start to do outreach, like find out who the podcast's hosts are, what their emails are. I created a one sheet through the course that I did with you, and then I just found it was actually fairly easy. Like the success rate is pretty good, probably 3 in 10 get back to me, and I think that's okay.
Right. Oh, actually, that's really good. And what's interesting is that one of the things I want to point out to people is when you were on my show, and I'm a very seasoned host. I mean, I know what I want in a guest, and you fit the number one criteria: 100% plant-based vegan. I mean, it's like it's simple, and it's amazing how many people will approach me that don't fit that criteria, and they think I'm going to bend the rules for them. And for me, I would rather have somebody who may not have a lot of experience on podcast, and yet they've got the right message. But what I found interesting is I like to make my guests jump through a few hoops before I have them on the show, because I want to make sure they're a fit. And so I put it out to you and Ed, would you do a pre-interview call? Both of you were on time. You were pleasant, you were knowledgeable, you said, yes, we'd like to do this. So you fit everything that I needed, even though you didn't have a lot of experience. And this is what I see holds people back, is they say, well, I don't have the experience. That doesn't matter. What matters more to a host is that you've got a great message that matches their market. Now, how long have you been getting interviews? So
I completed the course, I think in the summertime perhaps, and I started doing the research and outreach, and then started actually getting on the shows from about August onwards. So the last few months, the second half of last year, I was able to get on a show. We were kind of recording them like every week. I've had some interesting experiences with the shows. Some of them are really easy, like with you, like a seasoned host. It's just a really natural conversation. And I know we have a good connection anyway, because we have an aligned mission as well. So that's really easy and lovely. There's been some other ones, like there was this one podcast I was so excited to be on. It was an animal activist group that have a radio station in Vancouver, and they interview a whole range of people, and they've had some really interesting guests, like they have some of the First Nations people talking about how they've gone vegan, which is so interesting, because people just assume that all the First Nations are out there hunting bears every day. Not true. There's a whole other side to it. And so they've had some great guests on there, and I thought I really want to be on this show because I think it's got a wide audience just because of how many guests and interesting topics they talk about. But that interview was so weird because the host didn't have any connection with me at all, and would just read the questions from script, wait for me to finish, and then just be like, next question.
Right.
And they did this weird thing where they would mute themselves every time I was talking. And so there was kind of like this question, pause, answer, and they've never actually released the show. And so that was the only sort of what I deemed to be a failure. But it was such a weird experience. But you just keep on going and just go, well, I don't know what went wrong with that person. I don't know why we didn't have a connection. Most of the time it's been great, and the hosts are very experienced like you, and it flows really nicely. But I guess it's just like anything, like job interviews or whatever. Some of them go well and some of them not so well, but you just keep on going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Sandy Phillips Kirkham, she says, I like the routine idea. And the routine is a great idea. And it's interesting because just yesterday, I spent most of yesterday going through my emails. I had 500 emails in one inbox. Yeah, that's just one. I have several emails that I use for different reasons. And in this one, it's my main inbox. I knew there were some things that I had let slip through the cracks. Well, I didn't realize how much until I just said, okay, today's the day. I'm going to clean it up. And I had 5 interview links from interviews I had done in the past. And so yesterday I was just like pounding the pavement, sending them out on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. And it really got me to thinking about the routines, because I really emphasize that with my clients. And for the most part, I'm really great at routines, but I realized that I did let some things slip through the cracks. So with routines, what is your recommendation, or what is it that you do that really helps you to stay the course and get that one interview per week?
So some people might not like to hear this, but I really believe in getting up early. So I'm talking about between the hours of 5 and 6 a.m. on a regular basis.
That's late.
Is it? Okay. I like your attitude, Kathleen.
Absolutely.
So you're one of the people that likes my message, but I would say if you can get up like 6 a.m. would be late. Yeah, for sure. But for people that aren't used to getting up those hours, like before the sun comes up or as the sun's coming up, then 6 a.m. is a good place to start. Maybe work your way backwards. But generally I will get up between 5 and 5:30. And I don't need to be up that early. I take about 2 hours before I leave the house. And the reason is not because I'm lazy or slow. I can get ready for work pretty quickly. It's because I build into my morning routine what I call learning time. Okay. So that could be that I'm following a course like the Podstar Rockstar course. I would get up early and I would listen to that and maybe make some notes, or even do some actions, like download some podcasts or research something. And if you build that into your morning routine, at that time in the morning, like nobody is up. And so everything's quiet. There are no distractions. You don't need to start checking emails or anything like that at that time, because nobody's going to be reading the reply at that time in the morning. So that is me time. I do my meditation, my yoga practice, and then I do my learning. So I found that that's super helpful, and it gives you like a great start to the day because you've already accomplished something before you've even got to work. So I find that really helps, getting up early and just getting on it. And then you can tie up loose ends later on in the day. If you get an email back from someone, or you need to write an email, you kind of have it in your head, like, I've researched that contact details for that journalist that does that podcast, and I need to email them later. But you've already got that in your daily plan.
Right. I love the me time. I think that's so important, because I did that this morning. I did my meditation. I did my journaling. I just started this new thing. It's called tapping for energy. And it's like you're literally going over your lymph nodes, your energy points, and it has to do with acupuncture. And then I went out on a run, and then we started this call. But without that morning time, there's so much that wouldn't get done in my day. And so I'm really glad to hear that somebody as productive as you, and I'm sure that Ed has his routine too of what he does in the morning, that you actually, what I find interesting, and I think this would be so valuable to podcast hosts, to bring somebody like yourself on the show, that you immediately, your husband and you immediately pivoted after the pandemic was announced and shutdowns happened. I mean, you didn't sit there and wait and wait and wait. You got in and you said, okay, we've got people that rely on us. We have a company that we have to run. What do we need to do? Now, as you look for podcast shows with something like that kind of a story, with your background in business, your background of, the passion you have for the area you live in, what kind of shows are the best fit for you, and how do you go about finding those particular shows?
Yeah. So local shows of what we've concentrated on due to the pandemic, because, the whole point of this is to get visibility, to get essentially people coming to your website or your business and spending money. Mm-hmm. It sounds
bottom line. Yeah, it is. We're in business to make money. Yes. Thank you for that.
I'm investing a lot of time into this. So, there needs to be something back.
Right.
And so it's all well and good for us to be on loads of international big podcasts. But when people have a travel restriction, they're not going to travel to our bakery and come and buy stuff. So we've decided to just focus on local ones. And I found that there's a lot of local foodie people. So they might be journalists that write about food and drink, and they have their own show. Those have been quite good. And they might also be vegan food blogger type people, the vegan people.
Okay.
Loads of vegan podcasts. And so if you are vegan, it's quite easy to get onto their shows. And then I kind of did a lot of research in those spaces, and then I kind of ran out of shows to find. So then I started looking into a little bit deeper, and I discovered that there's like a whole area of hospitality podcasts that are written about restaurants surviving pandemic. Yeah, like loads of hospitality podcasts.
Okay, I want to stop right there. That's a take it to the bank, everybody. It's like, I never even would have thought of that. That is just brilliant. That's fantastic. So I want to acknowledge that. Okay, so
I think I found one, and then on Apple it says more shows like this, as you know.
Yes,
so then you
related.
start looking at related shows. So you start looking at one, and then like, wow, there's like loads of like restaurant success stories, restaurant pivots, how to motivate your restaurant employees. So there's a whole minefield there that I'm about to sort of dive into.
That's awesome.
That's my new group. And also a lot of wellness podcasts where talk about mindset.
Right.
Heaps of stuff on that, where you can talk about things like your morning routine and how you stay positive despite all the challenges that are thrown at you running a business and running a business in a pandemic. So it's interesting when you think you've kind of exhausted one group, then you find another group. And one more thing I want to say is I was listening to a podcast. This one was just for entertainment. It's a vegan comedian called Ramesh Ranganathan in the UK. He's Sri Lankan origin, and he has a really funny podcast called Hip Hop Saved My Life. So nothing that I would ever associate with my business. That's just for my own leisure time, because I do like listening to podcasts myself.
Right.
But he had someone on his show talking about entertainment and saying that in about a year's time, there's going to be a huge drought of entertainment because a lot of the filming hasn't been able to take place. So right now, what we're seeing on Netflix and so on is kind of the leftover stuff that was sort of almost finished, and then they kind of got it finished during the pandemic, or they've bought it from a foreign TV channel. But in about a year's time, there won't be as much of that floating around, and people are going to be seeking entertainment. They're still going to want stimulus. So they're going to be looking at other mediums.
Wow.
So we could see a huge uptick in podcast listeners in about a year's time. And already I know that you have a lot of the statistics that you share with your podcast, Rockstars.
Yes.
There's already a growing interest in podcasts, and I'm starting to notice a lot of famous people going on podcasts or starting their own shows.
Right.
So I'm seeing like, this is a great time to really understand the game and get practice, build up your portfolio so that you become like a top guest in the future.
That's a really good tip, because you want to look to the future. This is a long-term strategy. It's not like you do a podcast show and then you make a boatload of money. It's like, this is about visibility, positioning, and which really leads into the next question I have about do you have a media page on your website?
Yes, definitely. I have a media page. I have all the links to articles that have been written about us, blog posts. Then I've got my media kit for people like yourself, journalists, to find photos and bios. And then I've got all the list of the podcasts I've been on as well.
Excellent. Excellent. And let's see, I had a couple. Oh, there's something that you're doing now. You did this when you first opened up, and we had a conversation the other day about this, and you jumped on the idea to do with media, and you're doing media releases. Talk about that and how that can tie in with your podcast appearances.
Well, media releases is something I learned to do with Katrina Fox.
Yes.
She has a course on her website, vegan media course. I've forgotten what it's called now, but it's
an excellent course. Excellent.
Yeah.
Course.
And so she teaches you how to write a press release on there. And so I wrote some press releases during the course to send to local papers. And it's very interesting, actually, because if you pay for an ad in the local paper, nobody notices it.
Right.
And if you have an article written about you somewhere, it gets a lot more traction. Like, people subconsciously, they can see through the BS. They know this is paid content. This is worthwhile because a journalist has chosen to write about it.
Right.
So we're very lucky to be featured in our local paper a few times. We're also very lucky to be featured in Forbes during the pandemic because of our quick overnight pivot. And so that gives you a bit of credibility when you're approaching a podcast host, if you can sort of link, as seen in Forbes or
yeah, I think that holds a little bit of weight. Oh, by the way, I was in Forbes and they wrote about me. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it was interesting because during the pandemic, when we did our quick pivot, I had sent a press release to our local paper and it was kind of ignored. And then we were featured in Forbes. And then I wrote back to the local paper and said, well, Forbes were interested in this. And suddenly we got a full page spread. And it was actually amazing because we had one particular new customer said, I've read your article in the local paper. And she was spending $200 to $700 a week with us throughout the pandemic. And it was like,
wow.
It was like a guardian angel had just dropped down.
Oh my gosh.
It was insane.
Well, I want to point out why this is working for you. And I really want people to hear this. You're doing the work and you're not just stopping at, oh, we'll go ahead and do a press release, a media release. You took advantage of the opportunity that Forbes picked it up and you went back to the person who said no. You said, you might be interested. So I really want people to notice how you're connecting the dots, because the other day you worked on a media release where you had probably 3 or 4 different angles and hooks that could be used in that particular media release. It was a little longer than usual, but it covered a lot of territory. And you never know right now what the media is going to be interested in, because with the pandemic, with, today's a really interesting day in our country with the runoff election that we just had and what's happening at the Capitol. I mean, there's a lot of craziness going on, and people are looking for good, heartfelt stories. And your story is great about how you started your business, about what you're doing for the vegan community, about, just jumpstarting everything. So I would love if people have questions to go ahead and post your questions in the comments and we'll pick those up. But what other advice would you give to people? Oh, first of all, how do people find you? I want to make sure that they know how to find you.
So you can find us on Instagram at Eds_Bred. That's EDS_BRED. We spell bread without the A because my husband is Ed. He makes the bread. So the shop's just called Bread, Organic Sourdough, BRED. Okay. And that is our biggest platform because you'll find that Instagram loves food, fitness, and fashion. And you've got great images. I mean, I encourage people to go there. And just so that if people want to go to your website, what is your web address? Yeah, so the website has all the links on there as well. The media page, if you want to have a look at that, it's edsbred.com, EDSBRED.com. I'm actually going to go there right now and I'll see if I can share the screen to show people your website. And I'm doing something a little different than I normally do, but I'm going to see if this will pull up. And here we go. Okay, we're going to do a share screen.
And okay, I want to show people what a beautiful site this is. I mean, we can look here and just very, very well done. You immediately know what this site is about. I love that you have a pop-up menu. And the reason I'm sharing this with people is I want you to look at those people who are doing it right, and you can model after their success. Let's go to the media page. It's got quite a bit of information there. I know because I've been on your site. You've got, I love this. You've got the logos of places that you've appeared in large print. You've got your podcast. Now take a look at this. You had done very few up until when was it?
It was
well,
about
most of these.
Yeah, they were at the end of last year. And I'll be honest,
Okay.
I haven't done any research in the past month because with the bakery, Christmas is our busiest time, and
Absolutely.
we were open every day with no day off, leading all the way up to Christmas.
Right.
And
right.
so I decided to take a hiatus from podcast outreach, but I have got a number of podcasts to reach out to now.
Okay.
So I had a list lined up, but it was a really bad time. I found that sometimes when you reach out to people, they want to do the interview like a couple days later.
Right.
So you really need to have a bit of free time. Like you need to know when you're available.
Right.
And so I have taken a little break, and I do feel a bit guilty about it, but I have you in my head going, you need to do one a week. But
well, you know what? You also need to pay the bills. So it's like you gotta make decisions around that. But I want to point a few things out to people. First of all, it's Eds Bred without an A, EDS_BRED. You've got 43,500 followers. And the reason being is you've got beautiful, beautiful imagery. I mean, look at this, where you've got 1,057 likes on this, but this is what you'll find at their shop. And I really have to say, I so encourage people to check you out, because I know that when Karen and I can travel across the border, we're coming to visit you, because I was showing her pictures of your beautiful valley that you posted on, I think it was Twitter or LinkedIn. And she goes, where is that? And I said, that's where we're going to go. We're going to go get some sourdough bread, and it's going to be vegan, you know? So, so I'm just thrilled with the success that you're experiencing. And what can you, in closing, what can you advise people as far as like with the program, which again, this is Kathleen Gage with the Podcast Rockstar Club. And if you want to join the Podcast Rockstar Club, once this goes live on, or it goes up on YouTube and all the audio files, or platforms, you can go to powerupforprofits.com/podcast rockstar, powerupforprofits.com/podcast rockstar. So what are your closing thoughts for people?
So definitely create a one sheet. Even if a lot of the podcasts I've been on, I haven't always needed it, but it just makes you feel like you have a professional kind of portfolio or something to give them. It looks professional, it looks smart. So definitely create a one sheet, build it into your routine that you will listen to podcasts, or I always listen to at least one episode. And it's great, it's not hard work, because these podcasts are things I'm interested in as well. You know, I want to hear what other bakeries are doing, so I will find other bakeries and I will see if they've been on podcasts, and then I'll listen to their episodes, and then I get sort of like the inside scoop on my competitors. So I'm very interested in listening to all these podcasts. So do that, and then there's an app I found really helpful, I learned from Katrina, called Hunter, where you can actually find somebody's email address when you're on their website. So say there is a podcast that has a website, you go onto that website. If you've got Google Chrome, you activate Hunter, and then you say, find email addresses related to this site.
Wow. You're giving me some great tips here. That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay.
And then you get a direct contact to this person.
Fantastic.
So one thing I learned from you that totally blew my mind during the Podcast Rockstar Club, not to ruin the course for anyone, is the purchase funnel. This is next level. So you say during the podcast, and thank you, Kathleen, for having me on the show. And for all of your listeners, I'd like to offer a 10% discount for their first order using the code Podcast Rockstar Club, or whatever the code is. And then I can actually see on my website how many people are using that code, how much traction I've got from doing that particular podcast.
That's incredible. I love that.
That was your idea.
Well, Brilliant. Heidi Tucker says, I'm so encouraged and motivated by this interview. Bravo. I have some work to do in January. You do, Heidi. All of you have work to do. And myself included. I have to tell you, after I went through my emails and I found all those links that were just waiting to be promoted, I thought I need to get more of a routine going. Now, here's the thing. If you can't do it yourself, if you're really busy, but you know it needs to be done, hire a virtual assistant. When you hire a virtual assistant, interview them, talk to some of their clients, really, do your due diligence, but you may be at a point where you need to bring somebody on your team. Doesn't have to be full-time. I was talking with somebody the other day who, I won't say who it is, but she knows who she is and she knows she's very scattered right now. And I said, okay, first of all, you got to stop buying all these programs that you're not putting effort into. That's number one. So you got to look at what your behaviors are and make changes as needed. I said, the next thing you need to do is you need to get a routine going, and you need to actually sit down and map out what you're going to do next and next and next, because we all get caught with the rabbit holes, the squirrels that chase us, and we chase them. And you've got to stop that. And if you need a VA, and I told the woman, you need to get organized. She goes, well, I'm going to hire a VA, or should I hire a VA? And I said, what are you going to give them to do? And she goes, I don't know. I said, then don't hire them until you're very clear on why you're hiring the person, because you can waste a lot of time and money by hiring somebody and you have nothing for them to do. And I speak from personal experience. When I first started my business and we were going virtual, I had a virtual assistant. I didn't know what to give them. I was such a control freak, but I've definitely learned how to do it now. So be really clear on what your motives are, what your big why is, and what your direction is. So anything else in closing?
Just do the course. It's really good value for money. I know there are so many online courses floating around right now. And there are, I hate to say it, but there are a lot of people out there that just want your money and they sell you just crap. And I've signed up for things that are useless.
Right.
I won't go into the names of them.
Right.
But there's a lot of people out there that just want your money and you think you're signing up for something and it's just garbage. But Kathleen is not like this. I promise you. I paid the money, I did the course, and I'm getting results. So she is one of the few people. I think I actually sent you one of these meme things, and it says, it was two guys, and it says, I sell things online. What do you sell? Courses. What's the course about? Online courses. And it's kind of this joke, but I sent it to you because I felt like you could appreciate it. And,
absolutely.
But you're not that person. And I just want people to know that if you just listen to what Kathleen says, you will see results. And don't give the excuse that you're too busy. I'm a busy person. Just work it into your day. You can listen to podcasts while you're cooking your dinner or walking to work or whatever you do. There's no excuses. Just get out there and do it, because no one else is going to do it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time, Natasha. I really appreciate it. Give my best to Ed, and hopefully soon we can come up and visit.
Yay.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.